So today we are going to talk about insurance in general. We're going to talk about pros, cons, how it works, drawbacks of both cash, drawbacks of insurance. I really want you guys to leave feeling very comfortable knowing like what decision you guys make in terms of insurance or cash based in your practice. So it's super important to me that I just want to make sure everybody gets in. Super important to me that everybody kind of understands what they're signing up for before they start accepting insurance. So that's the goal. The goal is that you guys leave with complete clarity. You guys know what steps to take if you decide you want to accept insurance. So let's just make sure in terms of that. So drop your questions as we go. And as you know, I have a lot to say on this topic. I love that it looks like, oh man, this is going to drive me crazy. Okay. It's not working. We're just going to ignore the scratches. Okay. So most dietitians want more clients, but they don't want to spend more time hustling on Instagram. So a lot of times the question, or when people come to these presentations, they often are accepting cash. And so I'm not here to steer you either way, but I think it's important in the beginning of your private practice careers that you kind of understand both sides of both, right? And so while I have been accepting insurance since 2008, I do really believe that not everybody should be accepting insurance. Okay. So even though I accept it, I have no regrets on accepting it. It is super important when you leave this webinar that you have a definitive answer in your heart and in your head in terms of whether or not you're going to accept insurance. So just by a show, like who's cash based now? And just to be very clear, I don't care if you have one cash based patient, I'm counting that as. So who's cash based right now? Okay, so cool. And like, don't worry, like you don't have to say to me, you don't need this prolific following. Cool, cash. Okay, cool. Awesome. Like I said, sometimes people are afraid to tell me that they accept cash, but even for certain people's specialties, as you guys will see, it's a much better fit. Who is credentialed with insurance right now? Okay, so 90% insurance. Lauren, Stacy. Okay, cool. So, cool. Awesome. In the process. Perfect. Awesome. Cool. So kind of a mix as usual, like I said. And so, like I said, we will do, I know somebody raised their question. We're going to do all questions at the end, unless there's something super duper important that we need to get to. So, if neither, so only probably about 20 of you guys responded. What's holding you guys back right now from accepting insurance or taking cash? RD exam. Yes, for sure. Understood. Paperwork. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. We'll talk about closed networks. Yep. Pricing. Cool. Awesome. I do both. Yep. Overwhelmed. Cool. Awesome. So totally understood. So when I first started, right, in 2008, I didn't know my arm from my asshole with insurance. So it's totally understood that it feels overwhelming. What I think a lot of dietitians and CNSs don't talk about, and I don't talk about this a ton because I think I used to kill it a lot, is kind of your why, which we're going to talk about today. So when somebody says to me, they prefer to be cash, but they have to accept insurance because everybody else is, usually when somebody says that, that's a surefire sign that insurance may not be a good fit for them. So kind of accepting it because you feel like you have to is never, ever, ever a good idea to accept insurance, because we're going to talk about the nuances of it today. And when the tough gets going in terms of not accepting it. So this is baby Amy, a lot less wrinkles. This was 12 years ago. So this was kind of when my insurance-based practice was starting. I worked at Yale New Haven Hospital, and I worked in a diabetes center as a clinician. So at that time, I felt kind of overworked, right? I had like 8 jobs. That was one of my 8 jobs. I felt confused. So I didn't know where my next steps were or how to do them. I felt a lot of animosity. I don't know if you guys feel this, but I felt a lot of animosity towards my field for teaching me how to select the right spoodle to serve a number 5 can of peas, but nobody ever taught me like anything about opening a business, anything about accepting insurance. So I had a little bit of animosity towards our field. Obviously, like many of you, what you guys just said, you felt very uncertain. And then equally as important is I was making no money. I had a master's degree. I was board certified in diabetes education, and I was making $33 an hour. While I never forget where I came from, insurance was the thing for me that really elevated my kind of like in terms of my career. It allowed me to reach the people that needed my services and also make an income. I can't think of a time probably after the first year and a half in my practice when I wasn't making 6 figures, if not more. Right now, I run 3 different brands, which we'll talk about today, and I make over $1 million as a little registered dietitian who started just where everybody else did, right? So super important. I did not have any other skill set that you guys had. You guys are probably more skilled than I was because now you guys have me. But it's super important that no matter where you start, right? If your why is big enough, right? And you want to help people who can't afford your services to make an impact, it's going to really kind of resonate with you. So I'm sure many of us can relate to that concept of being overworked, underpaid, overwhelmed with starting our private practice. And so I'm hopeful by the end of today that you guys will walk away, like I said, with a clarity. So is insurance the right move for your practice? I just want to reiterate, I do not think just because you are on this call that insurance is the right fit for everybody's practice, right? The most important piece is your why, right? When I first started accepting insurance, I exclusively serviced eating disorders in Division I athletes. So my background was in high performance athletes. I just happened to do my grad research in Division I athletes. And so when I opened up my practice, I was servicing eating disorders. And before we had mental health parity laws, eating disorders were very, very expensive because if you went to the hospital, there was no coverage. If you went inpatient or residential, there was no coverage. So even though I did not know what I was doing with insurance, I personally felt if I could alleviate the financial burden of the patient seeing me, at least I could be instrumental in the care process for them, right? So for me, the way I started wasn't I wanted to be a millionaire. In fact, I did not know the types of money that I could make in private practice until it really started happening. For me, it was really about a why that was bigger than me. And it had to have been because when I started in 2008, there was probably like 3 of us accepting insurance, right? So you have to determine personally what your why is, okay? I cannot tell you how many discovery calls I have, on a monthly basis where dietitians will say to me, I feel like I have to accept insurance, right? Everybody else is doing it. And if that is the reason, that will not be a strong enough why. In fact, as we talk about variable rates, what you get, how you bill, the time frame that's involved in this, like it's going to be really high to insurmount that kind of piece. So I want you guys to really think about why are you even here tonight? Right? Why are you even thinking about accepting insurance? Why is it important to you? Right? Because I'm telling you, I work with thousands of dietitians each year. And for the ones that do not have a deep-seated reason that they want to make an impact while making an income, a lot of times the two just don't align. And we'll talk about why, right? So having a why where you want to serve people that maybe can't afford your services, but we are the nutrition experts. So like I said, I'm seeing one of the reasons why I'm doing this webinar is I am seeing such a clusterfuck of people accepting insurance who should not be doing it, right? They're doing it because they feel like they have to. They're doing it because they feel like everybody else is. That is not a good enough reason, right? Number two, is insurance right for your practice, your people, right? If you are in a super niche space, accepting insurance may not be a good option. The best types of people to serve in an insurance-based practice are people who have chronic conditions, right? So just to premise this, I run a weight management practice. On average, we see about 500 patients per month. And I'm going to tell you probably 470 of them are overweight, right? They have cardiovascular disease. They might have diabetes. We service a ton of PCOS and infertility patients. So the best coverage in the world of MNT is going to be in the preventative space. So it's not to say that if you work in eating disorders, right, that is not preventative, right? It's not to say that those are not covered services. They actually are eating disorders are always required to be covered. It just means there may be a cost share. So they might have a copay, a deductible. If you work in the GI space, we have a ton of dietitians in the coaching program that I run who just specialize in SIBO. But a lot of those patients also have chronic conditions that we can treat. So the types of people that you serve are really, in combination with your why, are really going to help you decide whether or not accepting insurance is a good fit for your practice. So when I say chronic disease, I'm talking about anything that increased the risk of mortality and morbidity associated with cardiovascular disease. So overweight, obesity, metabolic syndrome, prediabetes, elevated tris, dyslipidemia, family history of heart disease, right? We're not talking about billing today at all, but I just want to paint the picture because sometimes, because I don't talk about my clinical practice a ton, I want people to know the space that I practice in. And this is a space that is extremely easy to bill insurance for. Once again, that is not to say that you cannot work in eating disorders, GI, food allergies, pediatric feeding difficulties. I'm just trying to think of all of the dietitians that we work with in the coaching program. That is not to say that those are not things you can work with, but the preventative space is going to be the easiest. The last piece, and super important when you guys are deciding if insurance is the right move for your practice, is your mindset and your personality. Okay. I say this from a place of love, and I say this as somebody, like I said, I work with thousands of dietitians each year, coaching them through the process and helping them build their empires. The dietitians who are the most successful are always going to be the ones who own their shit. Okay. I am sick and tired. I don't even beyond tired of dietitians blaming everybody and their mother for what they don't have in their private practice. If one more motherfucking person blames Faye or Berry Street for what they don't have, if your business isn't busy, it's not because Faye took all your patients, right? I mean, you got to head check yourself on this. And so if we're going to sit around here bitching and moaning about these telehealth companies, I can almost guarantee you're going to be exhausted when it comes to submit your claim. You're going to be exhausted when it comes time to learn how to get credentialed. So like your mindset and your personality, like are going to dictate your success, like 1,000,000%. I work with, gosh, and it's really hard for you guys to probably conceptualize this. I work with at least a dozen dietitians in the insurance-based space making over $1 million a year in their group practices. Okay. All of my money that I make does not come from my private practice. All of the money that those dietitians I'm talking about does come from their private practice. So why that is significant is those dietitians, right? They have a completely different mindset and personality than the average dietitian that you see bitching moaning on Facebook, right? Because like if you cannot get your shit together, if you cannot get out of your own head, if you are going to play the victim, insurance, you are not going to have fun, right? Because what dietitians will tell you, one of my most famous quotes is, and I will say this today, and I say this every day, it may not be my fault, but it is my problem. Okay. We are launching our biggest launch that we have probably launched in 5 years. And there are no words to describe like the shit storm and the flaming dumpster fire of shit that has been going on as we launch these products. And so it required me to redo personally all of the landing pages, right? It does not matter that was not my fault, right? But it is my problem, right? And so if you want to be successful, I'm going to even say cash-based practice, like you got to get your head out of your ass, right? So for most dietitians, the magic is in the work that you're avoiding, okay? I'm going to say that again. I'm going to say it really loud. The magic is in the work that you're avoiding. So for some dietitians, that's the learning curve with accepting insurance. If you're a cash-based dietitian, it's your inability to become a ninja at marketing, right? On the other side of the really hard shit in your practice is where the magic happens, right? And so, but it's not easy, right? And most days feel really heavy. But for most people, the shit that they avoid on a day-to-day basis is the stuff that is going to move their business forward. It's the messy middle. It's the uncomfortable stuff. It's me trying to figure out WordPress today. Like not fun, but completely necessary in order to grow. Okay. So today I do want to talk about the differences because I think there is a lot of confusion between the two in terms of mindset, approach, and how it all works. So I think it's really important to kind of start here because a lot of you guys do accept cash or it's part of your practice or you want it to be part of your practice. So super important to kind of take that space. So we're going to go both and we're going to go like fairly unbiased, right? Because there are definitely pros of accepting in cash and there are definitely pros of accepting insurance. I think most people probably aren't acutely aware of the cons. Okay. So we'll get into those as well. So the benefits to accepting insurance, right? This like orange scribble is like going to be my demise. It's taking like every fiber in my being to figure out how to erase this thing. So my apologies. So number one, obvious. You can help more people with your services, right? So depending upon the place and the scope that you work, there is generally an infinite amount of people that need your help. I live in Connecticut. Connecticut is the size of a toenail. In my teeny tiny practice that is in Orange, Connecticut, sees 500 patients that come within a 10-mile radius of my office. So if you're going to come out and tell me that there's not enough patients for you to see, then you guys need to come hang in Connecticut because most of our patients are within 10-mile radius, right? This is a big piece is patients have MNT benefits and they want to use those benefits, right? I always say use yourself as an example. If you were going to see a physician or a nephrologist, right? Like even a specialist like a nephrologist, you're probably going to choose somebody who's in network yearly plan. Most patients have MNT benefits, right? And I am not shitting you. All Aetna patients get 10. Cigna gets at least 3. Most have unlimited. Many Anthem plans get unlimited. Highmark plans, while they have switched how they cover, all those plans have coverage, right? So the benefits are out there. Most dietitians just don't know how to bill them. Number 4, doctors love referring patients to insurance-based practices. All we do in my practice is we create little postcards, we put our QR codes on them, and we distribute them to the providers that we know like love and nurture our patients, right? So it's super easy because all the doctor needs to do is give the patient the QR code. Patient automatically is driven to our website. Our website describes insurance, our providers, what the process looks like. Easy peasy, they're booked. So it's not to say if you're cash-based that doctors won't refer to you, but it's generally more kind of in a concierge light because they have to sell you and they don't have time to sell you. And then I would say historically pay is solid, right? In Connecticut, our highest payer pays $194 an hour. Our lowest payer pays $78 an hour. So for the same exact service, somebody may pay us $80 and somebody may pay us, upward close to $200. There are certain states that the insurance rates are well over $300 an hour. And then there are certain states where they're about $100 an hour. But I always say, like, why I use the example in the beginning is that I made $33 an hour as a W-2 clinical-based dietitian at Yale. And so when people say to me, well, I only make $100 an hour, it's like I can't help but laugh out loud because $100 an hour after taxes is $67, $70 an hour, right? And so I don't know about you guys, but you must be a bigger baller than I am if you can say if $100 an hour is not, a reasonable amount of pay. So just to be very clear, there's also states that pay much more. So obviously insurance companies market for us. So once you get in the directory, patients are searching for you. They're searching for you in their zip code, right? Number 7 is really important if you are not a huge fan of social media or you're not a huge fan of networking. Insurance, is an easier gateway to getting referrals. Yes, you still 1 million need to market, but you probably don't have to go as aggressive on social media, right? So if you're not a social media person, once again, that's not the only reason why you should accept insurance. And once again, I think it's a terrible idea if that's the only reason why you accept insurance is because you don't want to be on social media, but it minimizes the time you need to spend on social media. Number 8, this is the piece a lot of people don't know. This is something I have been doing since 2009. This is something I teach in all of my coaching programs. You can easily incorporate high tickets, programs, packages, a la carte services. So for example, if you are a functional dietitian, right? Dutch testing, GI mapping, stool testing. If you're in sports performance like me, DEXAs, VO2 maxes, meal plans, anything that's non-MNT facing, you can monetize and tie up in a bow. No, you cannot bill insurance for those things. But I work with dietitians that sell $5,000-$6,000 packages, and then they incorporate insurance to offset the cost. It allows you to stand out, although I think we are having more and more insurance-based dietitians come into the market space. So I do not think it is as, as shiny of an object as before. But the 10th piece, which most people don't know, is that if you bill correctly, and I have to drive home this piece correctly, because there are no words for the amount of bad claims I see submitted. If you submit correctly, and it's under the preventative side of the patient's policy, they should not have a cost share. For dietitians who think they are billing under the preventative side and the patient has a cost share, there is a 96% chance that the dietitian billed incorrectly, right? So, 96% chance that the dietitian billed incorrectly, right? So a lot of times, so that's how you guys see Fays and Berry Streets of the world say free nutritional counseling, although I probably wouldn't use that type of language. But many patients do not pay anything out of pocket when billed correctly and when under preventative services, right? So lots of boxes need to be ticked in order for it to kind of equal those things. But I can sincerely tell you in my practice on 500 patients per month, maybe 2 of them have a copay, maybe 2 of them. So once again, just to remind everybody, I work in weight management. So let's talk about cash-based products, right? So lots of benefits to being a cash-based dietitian, right? You can accept payments upfront, right? If you accept insurance, you cannot bill the patient upfront. You have to bill their insurance when you are contracted with them. So if you are cash-based, right, you don't need to wait for the money. In insurance-based spaces, right, I would say on average, it takes anywhere from 48 hours to 30 days to receive payment. A lot of times when dietitians have not received payment, it could be like a third-party processor, or there is a good chance they did not process the claim correctly. So upfront payments are obviously a plus, obviously undeniable. You can define your price, right? I know that sounds super sexy and really cool, but the reality is that the market is only going to pay where it sees value, right? And so I remember talking to a cash-based dietitian in Seattle, and she told me that her initial consults were $425 and her follow-up visits were like, I don't know, $280, right? And so while that sounds amazing in theory from a revenue standpoint, when I asked her how many patients she had and she was full-time in her practice, I think she said 2, right? And so you can make your prices whatever you want them to be, right? It's like if somebody does not see the value in them, then they're not going to pay them, right? So yes, you get to define your price, which is pretty cool. But the market is only going to bear so much money for certain services, right? Really cool about being cash-based, less administration, right? You still have some admin. It's not as heavy. For most cash-based dietitians, there's not a learning curve, right? You can just shut up shop. You get an EMR, you set up your credit card processor, you set your rates, and you start collecting money, right? The only learning curve, which is super important, is you are a good clinician. If you're new to the space or you don't have a ton of experience, the administrative side of running a cash-based practice is probably much easier than learning how to be in building out your counseling skills and your clinical skills, right? I always forget to premise this whole presentation by your ability to succeed in your private practice is going to be based on your ability to be a good clinician. I know a lot of people think that it's your ability to run your business, but if you are a shitty practitioner, you will be a one-hit wonder and your patients will not come back, right? So being a skilled clinician who's empathetic, who gets good outcomes, is equally as important. And then you need clearly defined populations, right? So a lot of times cash-based, you align with a more specific, you might be like I was insurance-based and really kind of hone in on, eating disorders in Division I athletes, right? Niching before it was really a thing. You might just do mast cell activation theory or, one of those types of very specific disorders. But, by being uber specific, right, you really hone in your craft and you really are able to stand out from the crowd, right? So lots of benefits to being cash as long as it's consistent with your why. Super important, right? So let's now talk about the drawbacks, right? So the elephant in the room with insurance is always kind of like the admin paperwork, right? And so the main piece that I think dietitians struggle with, but I think as soon as they wrap their head around the fact that they are not universal, it makes it easier. So most policies are not universal. Fully funded group plans, they work like clockwork. But if you have a self-funded plan, which is beyond the scope of this particular presentation, right? The policies are not universal. So you can have a bunch of different, you can have an Anthem plan, and there could be 300 different derivatives of that Anthem plan in your state. While most of them will follow the same rules, right? The policies are not universal. You are paid the contracted rate. So you can bill insurance whatever you want. So we usually bill around $50 per unit. We get our contracted rate. So like I said, sometimes that's $194 for an hour of our time. Sometimes it's $80 for the same amount of our time. I personally look at everything in life as the law of averages. And as somebody who runs a pretty profitable insurance-based practice, it's really like the averages within your practice. So like for us personally, even though we have some low payers, just like everybody has low payers, you know, it's the law of averages rounding out well above $100 an hour, right? The third piece, and it's actually really, I find it really humorous. I don't know if I should laugh or if I should cry. Like some of the DMs I get from people are like almost hostile. Like they're hostile at me because we didn't learn this in school. Like when the reality is like, I learned this a much longer time ago, and it was a much harder learning curve because there was only 4 of us. Now you guys have so many resources above and beyond me for learning how to accept and bill and scale an insurance-based practice. But I think it is frustrating, and it continues to be frustrating for you guys as well as I do, because these myths continue to be kind of propagated in the space, right? Nothing is covered. The pay is shitty. They only cover CKD, when that couldn't be further from the truth. But that's what they're still telling you guys in school. And so it can be really frustrating to embrace something that you were told to run from. So totally understood. Obviously, we talked about this, and a lot of you guys have already noted this. Not all networks are open. So if you are in a state like Michigan, or you are in a state like down here in Florida, or you are in a state like Iowa where Blue Cross Blue Shield does not credential dietitians, or you're in California and your Cigna product is closed, right? The networks in terms of like kind of accessibility are different in every state. Some states, every single network is open. This is something that the Academy, or I'm working pretty closely with the Academy on this, on a lot of the closed network panels. We're really trying to gather some data, like real world data in terms of like what and the why behind the closed networks. But yes, I totally understand it. It's not super fair, in terms of what's open, right? I think this one takes the cake in terms of like drawbacks of accepting insurance is poor communication. I have never in my entire 47 years on this planet experienced poorer communication than with the insurance companies. I think we're like 10 out of 10 UHC applications on the credentialing side of my business where there's been something wrong with the contract. Even after 4 months of waiting, it could be the wrong TIN. It could be the wrong email address. It could be the wrong person that they issued the contract to. They could ask for the same information that you sent 6 weeks ago, 2 or 3 more times. So like the poor communication and like mishandling on the insurance side is extremely frustrating. But as soon as you kind of understand that, you kind of just like, when you start this process, you kind of just buckle in for the process. You accept it for what it is, not what you want it to be. It makes everything much easier. But on the credentialing side of my business, it's really funny when people will like send me these like really angry emails and they think that they're the only one that this happened to their contract, when that same day, like we experienced that 3 or 4 other times. And so it doesn't make it feel any less hard. It doesn't mean that your frustration isn't validated. It just means like, this is par for the course. And it's like, people will always say to me like that I'm a very like chill individual. Like it's very rare that I get upset or mad. I think it's because I accept insurance and like everything takes so long and I've just been used to everything going incorrectly. So it's poor communication, and that's really hard to accept as a dietitian because we just don't behave that way. And like we talked about better coverage for certain types of people, right? We talked about weight management being awesome, chronic care being awesome, eating disorders, GI also being very well covered. It just means the patient may have a cost share because those are medical conditions. So there's better coverage for certain types of people. And so depending upon how and where you practice will ultimately kind of determine that piece. Right. Drawbacks of cash only. I think a lot of times dietitians think that there are no drawbacks, but obviously the major one is decreased accessibility to care. Right. And so this was huge for me when I first started accepting insurance. And it continues to be just as important, 20 years into accepting insurance. So we specialize now really in PCOS. Most of our patients need a BMI under 40 to qualify for IVF and have a family. Most people in that space could not afford our services if they did not have access to somebody who accepted insurance. So for us, like I said, this increased accessibility to care and the decreased accessibility to care on the cash-based side has always been like the biggest reason for why I do this. Don't get me wrong. I like to make a shit ton of money. I will always talk about money. I will talk about how much money, I make. It's not something that I keep quiet. So I want to make sure that, yes, you still can run an insurance-based practice and make money, right? I don't personally feel like you have to choose. Once again, we have some really solid rates and we have some ones that are not awesome. But at the end of the day, for me, it's always about accessibility to care. Obviously, another drawback, once again, I want to be crystal clear, this should not be the only reason why you accept insurance, is now so many dietitians accept insurance. This was a brunch from the summer. These are some of my coaching clients. Most of the coaching clients in this picture have probably been working with me for 6 years. But 6 years probably, or most of these are long-term dietitians, but many of these dietitians have group practices. A lot of these faces, I'm sure you guys recognize from social media. But so many dietitians are accepting insurance that it does make it more challenging and competitive to really kind of steer through and just be cash-based. It tends to be challenging for referral sources. Like I said, it is a more challenging handoff from a cash-based dietitian. I'm sorry, from an MD to a cash-based dietitian, because they don't understand how coverage works. And so if you accept all insurances, it's a really easy handoff. If you don't accept any insurances, it becomes very challenging because there's a disconnect between the provider, the MD, the APRN, who's ever sending the patient your way, because it's just like they just send them your way and then you have to sell them, right? There's no pre-sell by them because, they don't know how your practice works. And like I said, you always have to choose your hard. If you choose insurance, your hard is going to be the learning curve. If you choose a cash-based practice, marketing will become your full-time job, right? And then just when you think that you feel comfortable, you have to sell your patient into, an ongoing package, a maintenance package, a graduation package, right? So marketing is very challenging if you're cash-based, because unless you run some type of membership or subscription-based program, you're constantly needing kind of to fill the pipeline, right? So once again, that's not a bad thing. That's just kind of typical business, right? But so that's why I always say you have to choose your hard. Choose the learning curve with insurance, or choose the learning curve to become a marketing ninja if you want to be cash-based, right? Sustainability can be tough in a cash-based practice. Main reason being, you just have to, you're constantly fishing, right? In an insurance-based practice, for good or for bad, I say this from a place of love, many of our patients we've been seeing since the practice opened, Since the new providers came onto the team, probably like 2015, 2016, and some of those patients are still our patients, and we work in weight management, meaning not a testament to our skill set. Behavior change is hard, but it's actually really challenging to discharge your patients in insurance-based practices because they want to keep coming back because they have many of them have unlimited visits. So it's a lot different than sustainability in a cash-based practice, where the model is just a little bit more challenged to kind of, like people just have to pony up more money. Okay. So I want to talk about insurance, how it works, because I know it seems so simple, but I don't think people understand the process. So I just want to frame the process. So there's two parts in the beginning stage of accepting insurance. There's the credentialing process that takes anywhere from 60 to 90 days. And then there is the contracting process that takes another 60 to 90 days. Okay. So generally speaking, from the time the committee reviews your initial your initial application, I would say on average, it's taking about 5 to 7 months, right? Some go super quick. Sometimes we get people's applications complete and executed within 2 weeks. Sometimes, like I said, it will take 5 to 7 months. There's lots of things that determine that. Sometimes it's just based on when the committees meet in your state. So some committees only meet every 6 weeks to review applications. It could be, right, like the quality of your application, right? Your CAQH could be 50 shades of fucked up. You might think for some reason that you can just be telehealth only and you don't need a physical address, when that is not the case anymore. And then you get to the 10-yard line 4 months in, and then they discover that you use your home address, which is residential, and then they deny the whole application. So the credentialing process can be super frustrating. I would say if you're somebody that's looking to get credentialed, I would give yourself probably, like I said, 5 to 7 months, knowing that there could be some bumps in the road. Once you get your contract, historically speaking, you will then be able to start seeing patients on your effective date. Sometimes the contracts are backdated. Like, we have no control over this on the credentialing side of my business. So sometimes we just got a new contract today for my practice that's effective March 3rd. We also see contracts come through and they're like backdated to January 2nd. You can't control that. Whatever the date on your contract is your effective date. But so obviously preparing your applications making sure that you have attention to detail is important. So then once you have your contract, you can start seeing patients, right? But like we talked about, all policies are different. So you have to verify your patient's benefits so you know exactly how you're going to bill for the service. You should never have any surprises, although 100% of all dietitians do, when you bill a particular plan, right? So my apologies. It sounds like there is like a 5-alarm fire, but anytime we bill UHC, I know in my head, if it's a fully funded plan, I know exactly how it's going to pay out. If I bill a Cigna plan, I know exactly what codes I'm going to use, how I'm going to bill it, based on, so verification of benefits is really important. And I see a lot of dietitians new in their practices passing that on to their patients, which I think is a terrible idea, because it goes back to sustainability, right? And so it also goes back to accepting ownership, right? If you're going to accept insurance in your practice, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your patients to know how to bill for your services. So like, for example, when I see dietitians complaining in the public Facebook page that they billed Medicare for an eating disorder, and they're pissed off it didn't pay, that is the responsibility of the dietitian to know that Medicare only covers diabetes and CKD, and it has to be billed a specific way, right? So it is your responsibility. I don't care if you have your patients sign forms. If you do not know how to bill insurance, the sustainability of your practice will be, jeopardized very, very quickly, right? So once again, it goes back to that first slide that I showed you guys, that the dietitians who are able to own their shit, the dietitians who are able to, educate themselves on what needs to be done is ultimately going to be most important. So verification of benefits is really, really important. I think it's the piece that most people are skipped over. With that being said, I am working with a software company right now on actually building out a verification of benefits that will the API will integrate with most of the EMRs if we do it right. So I do think in my heart of hearts, even spending time building out this software, that dietitians still need to know how the claim should go, right? And then getting paid, right? So getting paid means you need to choose an EMR. So that might be a healthy, an intake queue, a practice better, a calyx, a simple practice. And then you also need to choose a clearinghouse. A clearinghouse connects to the EMR and it allows the insurance companies to send data back and forth to the EMR. You cannot submit insurance claims just through an EMR. It needs to have a clearinghouse, and the clearinghouse has to be connected. And there is no such thing, unfortunately, with the exception of a handful of clearinghouses that are free. Availity is a free clearinghouse. It's not something I recommend dietitians submit with because it is kind of cumbersome, clunky, and somewhat challenging to use. So getting paid is not actually as hard as it seems. I think where dietitians get it wrong is it's like, right, like inputs versus outputs, right? If you put a whole bunch of shit, like literally, there's no words to describe some of the claims I see on a day-to-day basis. A lot of dietitians feel if they throw enough stuff at the wall in terms of ICD-10 codes, CPT codes, that something has to stick. But the reality is like getting paid should be a pretty seamless process. Somebody asked a question the other day in one of the public Facebook pages about like percent of claims not paid. Like what's a typical? And I would say like a typical should be 0%, right? I would say like in my practice, like 0 to 1% of claims are not processed, correct? Like we don't get paid. But like you should not have a shit ton of claims that you're not getting paid on, because there's a good chance that that is input error, right? So, so in terms of getting paid, and then just in terms of time frame of getting paid, I would say, I know I've mentioned this already, but some of our insurance companies will pay within 48 hours. Some of them will take 30 to 45 days. I would say for us, the middle ground is about, I would say, probably about 10 days. So if we're not paid by 6 weeks, then we follow up personally with the claim. The insurance companies have usually like 30 days from the date that they received in order to pay the claim, deny the claim, or ask for more information. So like I said, in terms of getting paid, I don't think it's as crazy as people make it be. It's just depending upon who's submitting the claim. So the credentialing process is the first part. Then you go into contracting, right? Then you've got to verify your benefits to make sure that they have the benefits you think they have. Then you submit the claim. And then, like I said, you usually will receive payment in about on average 14 days, right? There's going to be certain payers that it takes a longer time. Medicare always takes forever. If you have like a self-funded plan that uses like a third party to pay, like a Meritain, it's an example for Aetna, it might take 6 weeks, it might take 8 weeks. So but a lot of times when dietitians aren't getting paid, it's because, I say this from a place of love, they're trying to put like a generic code on every single claim, and then they're wondering why it gets denied. So like I said, this is kind of like the ecosystem of kind of how insurance works. And like I said, I would say on average to get your insurance-based practice up and running, It probably realistically takes about 6 to 8 weeks, right? I'm sorry, 6 to 8 months, because we have to go through the credentialing process, get our patients, select our EMRs, so on and so forth. So what are my best practices for being an insurance-based practice, and what shit should I not be doing? What shit should be doing, right? So, like I said, I think the really main, if you could do yourself any one favor, if you have not done it already, if you're thinking about accepting insurance, is to understand that, just like most things in life, setting up your insurance-based practice is probably going to take twice as long as you think it's going to. And so it's like building a house, right? Like anything, nuance like this takes some time. So making sure you give yourself a long enough time horizon, like if you are preparing to leave your full-time job. I think leaving your full-time job is a terrible idea, because, like I said, this process it's not controlled, right? And so it's like the wild, wild west. And so for me personally, I worked 7 years at Yale while I was building my private practice. So I didn't like hang a shingle, and just start my practice. So my biggest best practices are like lean into the fact of like things are going to happen how they do, not how you want them to happen, right? And so one of the things I find myself saying daily as a business owner who runs 3 separate businesses is like, when something goes wrong, rather than get mad, don't get me wrong, I definitely probably spent more time on the ground today, like screaming like a small child. I quickly realized that that's not going to move my business forward. And rather than kind of wallow in my misery, and don't get me wrong, I have misery just like everybody else, I say to myself in my head or out loud, I talk to myself a lot and I say, okay, cool. Like what action do I need to take next to move this thing forward, right? I think a lot of dietitians get kind of stuck on that step, and they get really mad and they get super frustrated and they cannot move beyond their frustration. But most days I'm kind of asking myself, okay, like this wasn't my fault, but it is my problem. Like, how am I going to move the needle forward, right? And so sometimes I'll be honest with you, like Medicare applications, like when I did my Medicare application, I think I did it like 6 or 7 times before I got it right. And so like while it became comical, like every time I got my corrections back, I just like sit down, because it used to not be online, and I'd fill out like the 42-page Medicare application by hand. I'd go to the mail, I'd put it there, right? And so you cannot let the game beat you, because it is just a game, right? What shit should you not be doing? Okay. Shit you should not be doing is thinking that you are going to build an empire being telehealth only. Okay. I don't care what Faye is doing. I don't care what Nurse is doing. I don't care what Barry Street's doing. But what I can tell you as somebody who runs a credentialing agency, the insurance companies are starting to send back applications that have residential addresses, people that are using, sometimes postal boxes, and I don't mean to be an asshole, but if you want to grow an empire and like you're going to grow it from from your couch, while there will be exceptions for people growing exceptional empires that are just telehealth based, the reality is that for most people, that is not seen as a professional operation. And so since the very beginning of COVID, since now, I always stand my ground. If you ask anybody that knows me, I always have said the same thing, that telehealth is a gift. I do not think it is going away anytime soon, but I would not bank and build an empire on something that has such high occurrence that it may not be here next year, right? So you need a legit address. It should not be residential. You can try like heck to use a residential address. There's a good chance they will turn it down. If you're applying to Medicare, like many states, they're doing site visits. They're coming out. They're checking out the office space. I do not say this to scare you. And I do not say this to be a Debbie Downer. People need to get their shit together if this is what they really want to do, right? And so I think the conversation, like we need to be having this conversation more about not is telehealth going to be here, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. It's like, okay, like the conversation is, I will be fine if it is not. Right. So it's fascinating to me that people are still, I don't know what the word is, like, like refusing to accept that it may not be here forever. So you have to, if you want something that's going to be sustainable, you have to be willing to do the shit that people do to run an empire and build a practice. So, but cool. Yeah, so cool. So I want to tell you guys about a new product I'm launching, and then we'll dive right into the questions. And we'll rock and roll because I see we have a lot of them. So a lot of you guys have asked for something that is lighter than my coaching program. And so the team has really been rallying the last 6 months. And what we created, I think, is really cool. I'll be sending out an email later on with all of the details for the first level. I'm going to talk about the 2 other levels, what it looks like, kind of why we did it, who it's for. One of the things I was getting really frustrated with is the cognitive dissonance of dietitians and insurance, right? It is very hard for me to watch people's practices crumble to the ground because of an education deficit. So I thought if I could create a tiered out membership that supported dietitians where they were in their journey, not where I wanted them to be, say, in my coaching program, that I could really help a lot of you guys kind of create the practice of your dreams. So we kind of call it build it, bill it, scale it. So for most dietitians that are new, you guys need help building your practice, right? You guys need help setting up the foundations, making sure the structure is sound. You need help getting credentialed, figuring out who to get credentialed. So we need to build it. For many dietitians, you need help billing. You need somebody who is there with you when you need help, when you need to submit your first claim, when you need to fix your first denial, when you need to fix your how to submit a secondary claim, right? So we kind of created a second tier where I will be supporting dietitians with implementation, which is billing. And then I work with a ton of dietitians who are scaling. So scaling to me means lots of different things. It means you guys might want to add a new dietitian to your team. It might mean you guys want to add an administrative assistant. You guys might want to scale by adding additional products. When I use the word scale, I think about adding revenue above one-on-one, right? So we wanted to create a place for dietitians like that as well. The most important thing for me as I created these things is I did not want you guys to have to continue guessing, right? So the goal of working through the tiers of the membership is that you guys have fewer mistakes, stronger systems, because these are the systems we use in my practice, but even more importantly, sustainable, predictable revenue, right? A lot of you guys struggle month to month with how much you're going to make in your private practice. If you build a strong foundation, you should be able to predict your revenue, right? So most importantly, you guys shouldn't have to guess. You guys shouldn't have to, go to the public Facebook pages. You should have somebody kind of holding your hand. So for a lot of you guys on this call, like I said, it's really going to be the baseline level. So really, you guys, most dietitians need a lot of support in the very beginning. Right. But the cool thing that we decided to do that's going to be quite different than most programs out there is that as you guys grow from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, you guys won't lose any of the baseline foundational content as well. So meaning like a lot of dietitians in my coaching program might want to refer back to old information, but say they've graduated. In this scenario, if you are still enrolled in a tier, you get access to it. So this type of program kind of supports you guys as you grow. It's pretty cool. And so level 1 is what we're going to release for you guys. We're probably going to release it tonight. We'll send out an email. We're going to take a super limited amount And we're going to release it right now at $79 a month. This is unheard of. But right now we're going to open it up to you guys. And then once all the spots are gone, we'll decide how to price it. But right now, this rate will only be available for you guys for a couple of days. I'll send everything out. Level 1 is just for dietitians who need help with foundation and credentialing. So you're going to get help with support, setting up your practice correctly, and really understanding insurance from day one, right? So super important. And then it's $79 a month. There is no commitment on this level, but we think probably most of you guys would be with me for 3 to 4 months, right? So we really think for a lot of you guys, because it's under $100, it will meet a lot of dietitians at a place where they probably couldn't afford to work with me in my coaching program for that level. So if you're new to insurance and you feel overwhelmed, if you're credentialed or preparing to get credentialed, if you need help setting up your practice, like meaning like setting up your CAQH, your NPIs, getting a business checking account, getting a credit card, choosing a credit card processor, all of the basic stuff, and you want somebody to help you, then this will be a good fit for you. Just one more quick slide, and then I will get into your questions. What you guys are going to get with this is basically clarity on everything for setting up your practice, right? You're going to get self-paced trainings. We're going to have a once a month optional Q&A. We're going to have a closed Facebook page, but obviously no one-on-one support. Level 2, we will release probably next week. That's going to be for dietitians who need help really billing, right? That's kind of going to be the fund. So, and then as you guys grow, you just can enroll in the next tier. And so we'll have level 2, that will be just support with billing. We're going to have a public Facebook page. You guys can kind of come there with all your claims, denials, secondary questions. We really wanted to make sure that you guys felt safe in a space where you got the support you needed for what you were struggling with. We'll still continue to offer the group coaching program, but for many dietitians, they want to be met where they are. And then obviously level 3 will be scaling. So if you're obviously, if you need help growing, expanding, adding one-on-ones, we'll have that option as well. But I thought it would be kind of cool on this call just to kind of release level 1 for you guys at the $79 a month, because I don't think we'll keep it at that for a really long time. And we're going to take a limited number of you guys if that's what you want support with. So I think it will be really cool. So, but yeah, we're really excited for this product. We've been working really, really hard on it. And we really do think for most dietitians, like, there is no reason why you should have a shitty insurance-based practice. So, so the tiers will be right now $79 a month. The billing tier will be $179 a month. And then the scaling one will be $499 a month. So just so you guys know what to look for down the pike. But yeah, we're super psyched to offer that. So we'll send that out. You guys are literally going to be the first people, maybe the only people in the short term to get access to that level 1. So I'll send that out, and then I'm just going to jump into everybody's questions. So yeah, we're really, really excited to offer that. So cool. Okay. And just to be super clear, as I go through the questions, like, I'm not going to do specific billing questions, right? I'm going to keep on task to kind of like basic overviews of billing, credentialing, and setting up your business, and then difference from cash-based and insurance-based. Let me just make sure. Okay, cool. Awesome. If an RD gets credentialed through a telehealth company, then decides to go fully into private practice, do they have to start over with the credentialing insurance companies? Awesome question. Unfortunately, yes. Okay. So if you worked for another private practice, if you worked for a telehealth company, you have to start from scratch under your EIN, right? So, so you basically start from the beginning, which would be the credentialing process under your new EIN for your personal business, right? So, interesting enough, sometimes it goes faster, than a typical process. Sometimes it goes slower because we have to untangle you. I run a credentialing agency for dietitians, and we do hundreds of applications per month for dietitians who don't want to do it on their own. And most of our dietitians come in working for a big telehealth company. And I would say like, it's kind of like a crapshoot. So sometimes it takes longer, but you do need to start from scratch. And so like, you would need the basics. So you would need all of the same stuff that they used when they credentialed you. So great question. I have a couple YouTube videos on that as well on my YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is just the Reimbursement Dietitian, and you can search for some of those videos. As a Michigan-based dietitian in private practice pay for over 25 years, is there a benefit to credential with UHC, Aetna, and Cigna since Blue Cross Blue Shield will not? Yeah, great question. So for everybody who doesn't know, Michigan has been a challenging state for the last 20 years because Michigan has not provided licensure to dietitians. And so Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, without dietitians who are licensed, will not allow them to participate with that product. So dietitians in Michigan can credential with other insurance payers, but not with Blue Cross Blue Shield. I mean, I'm going to answer all of these questions as if I were if this were me, and then I'll explain to you kind of why. So personally, I would, because eventually, so licensure just went through last year. You guys probably have another, I don't know, 8 to 12 months before, it passes through all of the levels. Then eventually Michigan will allow you guys to participate. And so there's no harm in you doing all of the legwork now with UHC and Cigna, because eventually, because you guys now have licensure rolling out, it's just kind of like the logistical process. So like, personally, like I look at that as a shoe-in. And so like when Michigan goes licensure, you guys have really strong advocacy in Michigan. And so like your public policy team is fucking outstanding. Like they're going to make that happen. And then if you have all the other payers, like you're going to just be in such a better position than everybody who sat there and complained. That's going to be a scenario where like we talked about, right? Like your ability to be proactive versus reactive, it's like it's going to like, be very helpful. Let's see. CAQH help with level 1. Yeah, so great question. Yep. So CAQH, so like I can do CAQH in my sleep. So if you guys ever did we did a really cool credentialing. So one of the reasons why that prompted me to really tier out these levels and to take my coaching program and break it down is in November, we did a credentialing challenge where we had 100 dietitians register. And like 75% of them got all of their applications in within 7 days. And I did not expect that. But what I really realized in that challenge, where a lot of dietitians won their money back, was dietitians are capable of incredible shit. They just don't know what they're doing and they need direction. So with the CAQH, like in this membership, like we'll be like, you can post questions like, okay, cool. Hey, how do I answer this? I will not review your application personally. But in the membership right now, we have a video that walks you step by step. I mean, I already built out, the content's already done it. It shows you how to do everything. So, can I change? I already paid for the masterclass. Can I change? Yeah, shoot me an email. I'm not sure what so the master classes are not going to be included, in the membership. So the master classes that we offer, like next month we're doing one on how to add an APRN and a PA to your team. Those won't be included for free. What be included is like the resources, the Facebook page, the monthly calls, but there will not be any, we're going to give you guys a discount on those, but they're not going to be included like they are in my coaching program. Lisa asks, what if you're midway through the timeline for credentialing and then have chosen a biller? Do you have a service for that to allow for consultations once I'm finished? Yeah, so good question. I'm not a fan of a biller because I would say in this scenario, if this biller just bills specifically for dietitians, and they have a proven track record, then that's totally fine. Most billers, in my experience, don't know how to bill for dietitians. And so unless they solely bill for dietitians, then you will often have like, it will be more frustrating than when you started because they will not know how to bill for the specific code. So I don't do a ton on one-on-ones. The one-on-ones that I offer are anywhere from, they're generally like, because they're higher level, like I usually charge like $500 to $1,000 an hour. So I'm happy to do one with you. It just won't probably be an efficient use of your funds. Yep. Great question. Really good question. What are the main differences between the Reimbursement Academy and your group coaching program? So great question. So the membership is tiered out. And so like, it's really like for people getting started, for people in the middle billing, and then for people scaling. When you join my group coaching program, you get like an accelerated pathway and you get a lot of one-on-ones with me. And then you also get 35 credits. So it's basically all three programs. And then you get to go into a special container once you graduate from that. Which only like a select handful of dietitians get to go in, where you receive a ton of one-on-one support. So main differences are completely tiered out, a lot lower level of support. Coaching program is 35 credits approved. The memberships I won't even bother getting approved, and a lot of me. So the main thing with the coaching program is you get everything. You get all master classes, you get cheat sheets, you get resources, you get one-on-ones with me. So say you want to build out a la carte program, I'm going to spend probably 2 or 3 calls with you, like going through your copy, going through your services, your deliverables. So we're really going to keep the group coaching program like super premium, super high access to me, while the other 3 tiers will be, just like, a slower path. But I wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to get education. Any suggestions for opening a business bank account for insurance-based practices, online banks versus local, how the digital payments come through? Great question. So shockingly, even though it's 2026, not all insurance companies will accept an online bank for transactions. Shockingly, Medicare will not allow like a Novo, even like an American Express banking account. So personally, I have, even though I don't love them, I have all of my business accounts with Bank of America because I like everything linked. So I have 3 separate businesses, 3 separate EINs, but I'm able to see everything in one account. The way that the digital payments come out, it's through direct deposit. So say today, Anthem paid us for 25 claims. Cigna paid us for 5. All of that money just gets deposited to your business bank account, and then you pay taxes on the money that you received. So you always want to make sure, if you are an LLC, that you have a specific business banking account that all of the money is received. The same, even if you're a dietitian working for Faye, you need to have a whole separate bank account that money is going into, because that money is not taxed, right? So say you work for Faye and you also work, you work outpatient at a hospital. The money outpatient from the hospital is already taxed and it's going into your personal account. That's totally fine. Any money that's received from your business, right? Because when you work for a Faye or a Berry Street, right, you work for yourself, that money needs to go into a separate account because that money is not taxed yet, right? So while I am not a huge fan of the big banks, I do believe, just from a sustainability standpoint, I just like everything. And then personally, I have credit cards. Like I have a Visa and a MasterCard, one of the, whatever Bank of America has. And then I have an Amex. The reason why I have both, like a Visa or a MasterCard, is not everybody in the world of business accepts American Express. So like I went to go pay my car insurance, which is expense through my business, and I went to pay it online this morning. the only options were MasterCard, Visa, and Discover. So I know that was an extended way to answer your question, but I do believe going with a physical branch, if you're going to definitely credential with Medicare, because they will require it. And then Medicare will also require physical checks. So some of the online banks won't issue checks right away. You may need to order them. So yeah, a small business, like you can also go to a local credit union as well if you have that capacity. But the money will just deposit directly into your insurance account, and I'm sorry, into your bank account. And you'll see like a deposit, like a $1,200 deposit from Bank of America, a 560. And so you still need an EMR to go back and go through. So you know who you're paid for. But you want to do electronic payments for everything. So yeah, perfect. Yeah, cool. Great. Awesome. Can you work part-time for a company and be credentialed with them and also go in your private practice? Great question. Yes. So you can work for as many companies as you want, including your own company, and be credentialed. So a lot of dietitians in my coaching program right now, before we had this membership, I would probably tell you that maybe like 70-80% of all of the dietitians I work with either started working for a Berry Street, a Nourish, and then started their thing on the side, or they're currently doing it at the same time. And we have not seen it to be an issue. So you can be credentialed, like, just for example, I worked at Yale. I was credentialed outpatient in the diabetes center, and then I separately credentialed myself in my private practice. So so like it was very rare that I didn't have, like, I've never had one job, including now. So yeah, you can work for multiple companies. Like Mike said, it's going to be updated in your CAQH. So like in the membership, that's something that I kind of help you guys set up, is like your practice locations, your TINs, where do they need to go? And it does not impact the other company at all. So your CAQH is like a depository. All of your like information goes there. And like, you won't have a new CAQH for your business. Like you can use the same one that you had for Faye or Berry Street or whoever you're working for. In fact, you will have the same one, the same number. We're just going to update it, add your info, add your TIN, and just make sure, like if you're working for Nourish, you're on their liability insurance. If you're working for Faye or Berry Street, it is yours. Yeah. Yep. Gabriella, can you bill for group programs? Yep, you can. Yep. So we do a lot of work with group programs. We do PCOS programs, diabetes programs, general wellness programs, and all programs can be billed generally both via telehealth and in person. So they don't tend to discriminate. The patient's policy has to have that on it, but often if they have initial and follow-up visits, they also have group MNT. Things to keep in mind on group MNT, like it has to be like MNT, whatever that means, not just general education, right? Every patient needs to have a note. What does the note need to look like? The note needs to look like any other initial follow-up assessment. And then you need to bill for every member of the group, and you have to have all of their information, right? So think about it like it seems really sexy in theory. And we love doing it because the community loves the classes that we put. I'm sorry, like the MNT that we do. But just keep in mind that it can be a lot of work. So. Yep. What program would I fit in considering midway through a biller? She only works with RDs. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So you probably would be a much better candidate for level 2. We're probably going to like roll that out next week. Level 2 is going to be like really like, I think where you guys are going to like really kind of come into your own, because I think for most of you guys, like that's where you suck. I say that from a place of love, but like you show me a claim, I can tell you how to fix it in 30 seconds and get you paid. And so for most people, that $179 that they pay a month, like is going to be like all they need to do is like see 2 patients to really like make sure that money is worth it. So level 2 is going to just be all billing. You guys submitting claims, you guys getting support, you guys showing me claims. We're going to have weekly office hours. You guys can come, bring your claims. So it's going to be really like level 2 is really implementation. Level 1 is really education and foundation. So like in level 2, we are like doing the shit. We are submitting the claims. I am helping you guys submit the claims. I just really, that part is really important for me, because I see a lot of you guys like struggling with that. I'm really excited. Like it's taken us, if I'm being honest, like it's been one of the hardest things we've ever done from a logistical standpoint. But I think it will help so many dietitians, and it will be at a price point I think that like dietitians can afford. Will it be my soup to nuts group coaching program? No. But for most dietitians, I think what I learned in that credentialing challenge is like, you guys just are incredible. Like you just need me to like turn you a little bit, like fix this, like dot your I's, cross your T's. And then I think you guys are unstoppable. But I think if we can't get you implementing, you're going to get really frustrated and then you're going to give up. So yeah, so we'll send everything out next week. We'll probably send it out to you guys first. And then whatever's left, then we'll release some of the spots to the public. But yeah, we're super psyched. Yeah. Like I said, I really just wanted a way to help more dietitians, and I didn't know what that looked like. And I'm still not sure what that looks like, but I can tell you like I'm on a mission to help you guys in any shape or form I can. So any other questions or anything I can help with? Any questions we didn't miss? Yeah, I think what I really want you to kind of think about is not challenges figuring out benefits, not as efficiently with pay space. Yeah. I think this is a really good challenge, but I also want to talk about it. So Diana says one of her biggest challenges is figuring out benefits. I think one of the things, and I actually learned this, I kind of learned this in the last 24 hours when I was teaching myself WordPress, is I think sometimes we make things harder than it really has to be. A lot of dietitians bank that when they go into Availity or when they call the insurance companies, that what the people tell you on the other side is going to be like Bible. And so I like to take the approach of, I should already know what this patient's benefit is like before I call, right? And so I think a lot of times you guys lean in rather than like anybody, if you guys are on this and you have my cheat sheet, like I sell a cheat sheet, it's $150. Like it changes most dietitians' lives. It shows you exactly how to bill every single code. All a dietitian needs to do is sit down, study that cheat sheet, and then you get logic. The way we built out this new verification of benefits software is based on Amy Plano's logic, meaning when we run these verification benefits, when we use AI bots and we interface with Availity, the machines have to beat me. And so if these machines don't beat me, then I won't put my name behind the software. But there is basic logic. And so that's why I really want to go back. It's not about in Availity, like trusting what they tell you. It's going in, okay, I have a fully funded UHC plan. This plan has unlimited benefits if I use these 10 codes, right? So I think most people approach verification of benefits differently, right? They put the power in the little person or in the little bot versus all you need to learn is the basics. There's only 4 insurance companies you really need to know how to bill. So, literally you can tell me any insurance plan. I could tell you exactly how, like, I don't even need to really even know like the prefix. I can tell you how to bill it because they follow basic logic. So what I want to say to you, Diana, is don't forget that you're a really, really, really smart person. And sometimes we like trust other people too much. Like, don't rely on them. Start to learn how to do it on your own, like in your own head, and you will do fine. Like I said, I think we handicap. I guess what I'm trying to say is like today I was using ChatGPT as I was building out WordPress. And some of the stuff was pretty logical, but I kept on asking ChatGPT and I found it took me so much longer. I guess what I'm saying is, so I think we need to trust our intuition that we're pretty fucking smart people. And sometimes we just need to lean into what we know and like put blinders on. Right. So yeah. And I agree with Lauren. Availity fucking sucks. Like Like we use availability just to check to see if we're paid. We don't use it for benefits. But no, I hate it. And I get really frustrated when dietitians use that as a clearinghouse because it's free. It's going to cause them more frustration and aggravation than paying $45 a month for a clearinghouse. How do you get around using a residential address? You get an office. You know, I mean, like before COVID, how do you think people are in a private practice? I think so. Like, you can rent space. So one of the things I give in level 1 is I have an 11-page PDF of all different suggestions on if you are going to be telehealth, like what that can look like. But I give very specific examples of kind of what to find. But I think it kind of goes back to like asking better questions is like, why would like you could use a residential address, but they're probably going to pull it and then they're going to show that it's zoned in a residential area. If they come back to you, which they do, like I said, I run a credentialing agency. I can tell you what we hear every day. They're going to ask you for another address, or they're going to ask you, is that residential address ADA compliant? If you answer no, that the residential address is not ADA compliant, they will sometimes process your application perfectly fine. They're just looking for verification from you. So sometimes you can. It's just a matter of if you use a residential address, then that address is listed in the directory. You don't want to be an insurance-based dietitian and not list your address because that's how you get business. But some dietitians will say they don't feel super comfortable. I often say, if somebody wants to murder me, I live in a high rise on the 17th floor that's like 85 degrees of fob, separations, elevators, door people, like they're going to find me. So like, it doesn't matter if my residential address is listed or not. So some people will rent from Regis, like, rent space where you can go in and physically see patients as well if you need it. Some people will rent office space from other dietitians. One of the things that I was thinking about, and clearly I have a lot of shit to do. I also thought it would be really cool because I have a network of dietitians in every single state that are in my coaching programs and memberships. I also thought it would be really cool if we almost started like a directory of dietitians who had space where if a dietitian needed to rent it, it would be nominal. Like you would just reach out to that particular dietitian. So that's like a whole other thing to work on. But like, for example, I have office space and we have 2 offices. We're not always using our office space. I'd be happy to have somebody else use it if they just needed it, for a very small amount. So I think there's lots of dietitians, other providers that you can get space from as well. Kind of deciding what that wants to be. Don't know. Member services don't know what I'm asking using your cheat sheet. Yeah, like my cheat sheet works like clockwork. For example, I have never seen my cheat sheet not work if the right questions are asked. So for example, everybody who has E66.3 with UHC, fully funded plans, unlimited visits. Any of the codes listed on the cheat sheet, unlimited visits under preventative. So like any of our UHC patients, we don't call. Cigna patients, Z71.3, BMI code at least 3 visits. Aetna, bill it like the cheat sheet, everybody gets 10 visits. So to be honest with you, for member service, like I don't even call member service because you like the cheat sheet will tell you how it should work out. You know what I mean? Sometimes I see people say, I use your cheat sheet and I build with this. And I'm like, that's not on the fucking cheat sheet though, too. So I think it's kind of like AI. It's kind of like ChatGPT, right? Like ChatGPT is only as good as the prompts you give it. And so, for example, if somebody says back to you, Diana, and they say, it's a UHC fully funded plan, patient has no preventative benefits, you then push the prompt back and say, that makes no sense because the cheat sheet says under the Affordable Care Act, fully funded plans have unlimited visits. So I just want to push back on that because I think it's like anything. You have to make sure that we ask the right types of questions. And like I do to my team, when my team does verification of benefits on weird plans, if my team gets a plan back and I look at the VOB and one of the questions I ask my team is the verification of benefits check that you received, is it consistent with the regular logic that we normally have? So if we get a plan back and it says no benefits and it's a plan we know that that's a bad quote of benefits as well. So Like we have to be able to interpret benefits for both the quality and the quantity that exists, right? So, and yeah, don't get me wrong. It's like it's much easier said than done. But I also see dietitians say, "I use your cheat sheet." I'm like, "How did you bill it?" I'm like, "Yeah, go back to the cheat sheet. That's not on there." So, we just have to ask, like better questions too. I don't want to run before. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to I won't want to off rent space before being fully credentialed. It's kind of like me putting like the horse before the cart. How do you think like that? How would a doctor get credentialed? An APRN, a PA, a PT, right? Like they would have to have legit office space. Um, you don't have to rent office space before you get fully credentialed, but they're also not going to give you a contract, generally speaking. So you just have to choose your heart in that scenario. Kind of the statement that I understand and I can get behind is okay, like it's how can I afford office space if I'm not seeing patients and making money? But the reality, I think it's like, how can you not afford to do that if that's like your dream or your goal? So in the beginning of my career, when I had no money, to be very, very clear, a lot of times what I would do in my business is I would just save up. Like if I wanted to work with a business coach, like I would save up for like 2 or 3 years before I was able to do that. Or if I needed office space or I wanted to buy the body gem so I could do, you know, med gem testing and things like that. That was $4,000. So rather than kind of say I couldn't do it, I just saved up money for it. Same way that when dietitians come to me and they say, I need to hire, I need to scale my practice, I need to make more money, but I can't afford to take your hiring program. Well, then there's a good chance if you can't afford the $2,000 or whatever it is, you're not in a place when you can hire. So sometimes you have to ask yourself a question like, am I really ready to do this? Right? Like, in no shade, like just to be very, I don't say that from a bad place, but a lot of people like just because you want to do something doesn't mean that it like you can, right? So like a lot of times like you have to set aside money for things that are important to you. But and like I know for me, what was really hard was I was making fucking $33 an hour. So it was like, and then I had fucking a gazillion dollars worth of student loans. So like I want to be very clear. I totally understand everybody's pain, but I also knew that I wanted to fucking do this. I knew I wanted to grow an empire. And like I knew that it was not going to be easy. So yeah, so I just started to kind of save up for the things that I wanted and just did the best I could with what I had. I also used to go into people's houses, which I also wouldn't recommend. I used to drive around all Saturday morning, like seeing my patients because my office at the time wasn't super central. So what if you see a patient in an office that you rent per hour, but your business is set up through your home? Then that is what we call insurance fraud. So the address that is on file with the insurance company, I don't care if you're Fay, Nourish, Berry Street. If you ask anybody legally, the office that it is listed in the insurance company's directory, technically, even if you're providing telehealth, it's no longer COVID, you are able to go to that office. On your documentation in your notes, I'm sure you guys all know this. If you don't, then you do. Now you know. Your note needs to say your location and the patient location. So like in the documentation class that I teach you guys, I show you exactly needs to be in a note. But yeah, so if you put on a note, you were in one office, but it wasn't the office that was on file, then the insurance company would call that insurance fraud, right? Because you're reporting to be in an office that you're not, right? During COVID, it was different, right? Nobody could go to their office. So that's kind of how we got all these telehealth companies. But just because somebody's doing something super important to always remember doesn't make it legal, right? Just tell yourself that because people are like, well, if they do, yeah, does not mean it's legal, So how can I better word the question? Does the patient have? Yeah, so you're forgetting a question for the Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield ones in California is you're forgetting to ask them, is this a fully funded or a self-funded plan? 67% of all Anthem plans in the state of California are self-funded. If they're self-funded, then they do not follow the algorithm, right? Self-funded plans do not need to cover the same things that the Affordable Care Act. So a fully funded Anthem plan will cover unlimited visits with Z71.3, while a self-funded visit will not. So that's why on my verification of benefits, the first question that we ask is this a fully funded plan or is this a group plan? Because then it's like the decision tree, right? The whole thing goes a whole different direction. 67% of all plans in California are self-funded. So that's the missing question. That's the better way to phrase it is when the rep picks up the phone, is this a self-funded or is this a fully funded? Can you use a virtual office or a co-working address on your application? You can use whatever you want as long as you're okay with the consequences. So for example, I had a dietitian in my membership. She knew she was going home to South Dakota. So she credentialed through South Dakota. She lived in Colorado. All her Colorado claims were going through South Dakota. South Dakota flagged her, reached out to her and said, hey, do you live in South Dakota? She said, yes. They started following her on social media. They noticed she did not live in South Dakota. They went after her and DC'd the contract. When she finally returned home to South Dakota, the insurance commissioner came after her for insurance fraud. So yes, you can use whatever office space you want. You just have to be okay with the consequences, right? So technically, not to be a Debbie Downer, but you are supposed to be in the box that's listed. So whatever is listed as your office location, even if you're providing telehealth, right? Because remember, we used to not be able to provide telehealth in people's houses, right? We would be in our office, they would be in a remote location. So totally fine. Like, and I just want to be very clear. I give zero fucks what anybody does. I say that like sincerely, meaning like everybody wants me to report everybody and their mother. Like everybody was like, oh, Faye's doing this. I give zero fucks. I slay in my own lane. I do not care what anybody else is doing. I only care what my grasses looks like. So when people ask me questions, I answer them honestly, but I don't care. Like if somebody wants to use a virtual office, like I'm not mad at you, because a lot of times in your business, you need to do whatever you need to do to get shit done. Right. So like I feel you, I hear you. Like I was fucking broker than broke when I started all of this. So I pass no judgment on what people do in their practice. I only pass judgment on people that I know are operating shady operations and then go into the public Facebook page and then like talk shit about the Fays and the Berry Streets of the world when they're doing the same thing. So hopefully that gave some clarity. Looking at the one, they wanted a business address. I use Availity to bill for free. It works for most of the time. Yeah, so there's no for Medicare, so you cannot submit so for most Medicare claims need to go to a clearinghouse. If you want to submit a Medicare claim and you don't have a clearinghouse, then you usually have to snail mail it. And so it usually will take about 2 to 3 months. And so Availity will allow you to submit Blue Cross Blue Shield and Aetna ones. And then Cigna, you also need a clearinghouse. So some of them you can go through Availity. A clearinghouse costs the clearinghouse for Calyx is $15 a month. ClaimMD is $25. Office Ally is $45. So you always want to think about the time that it takes you to submit that claim, right? So if you're going to get $150 for a claim, but it took you an hour to submit that claim, right? Because you had to use an Availity or repair, right? We just want to always kind of consider like the return on our investments. Rita is in Massachusetts, I think. Yeah. I'll answer for her because I know Rita. Hi, Rita. Once you are contracted, do they still come back and check on your office? Yeah, like they can come back at any time. With that being said, like I've been a Medicare provider since 2008. Nobody's ever come. Like, you know what I mean? So I would say as of lately, like in real time, remember, because we do credentialing applications for dietitians. I would say we've seen them go to Maryland. Like this is in the last 2 weeks. Maryland, Virginia, Illinois, California, and New Jersey. What's also even more interesting is sometimes they'll go before you're even contracted. That's the fucked up part. So we notice in Washington and Oregon, they will, just for Medicare, just to be clear, they've gone out to spots before you've even had the contract for certain dietitian, which is so crazy. It's like, why, like, leave me the fuck alone, or at least that's what I would say. Like, oh, you didn't even give me my contract. I haven't taken the jump yet to create my business. Do I need an EIN to start into level one? Nope. Great question. So that's what, like, we really want, like, sincerely from the bottom of my heart, I wanted level one to be like no stakes, come for a month, stay for 3, like whatever you want. Like, I teach you how to do EIN, NPIs, CAQHs, business locations, like anything you would need to start your business, like we teach you there in like a very low stakes environment. So like you need nothing. You just need to show up, go through the modules, and then just ask for help. Like, yeah. So yeah. So months to commit private practice, a few hours. Yeah. Yeah. And so like you can file for your LLC online. I'm going to be sincere and watch this totally backfire. You can chat GPT most stuff. So like your LLC, you put in your state, give me the step-by-step directions, including website locations on where to apply for my LLC, right? And it's going to walk you through the steps. Okay, this is your state. This is where you do it. This is where you have to file your articles of confederation. This is where you pay your yearly fee. So, just to kind of piggyback off of what Mike said, I know this is a thing that really stresses dietitians out, is the name of your business. The name of your business can be whatever you want it to be, but I would probably just use your name. And if you want to be creative, DBA. So the name of one of my business, the formal name of my business, because I started it before I was married, is Amy Kristock LLC. I DBA as the Plano program. The other one is like dietitian billing. We DBA as the reimbursement dietitian. So don't sweat like your legal name of your business. It does not need to be the one that's forward facing. You'll notice when we send out disclosures, if somebody buys something, like my attorneys have my legal business, but they'll have DBA, the reimbursement dietitian. So I know dietitians like totally like stress themselves out and they're like, oh my God, what should I choose as my name? Don't stress that piece. Like whatever, like, like just like do the shit you need to do to move your business forward. And in these scenarios, like obviously you need to have your LLC set up properly, but like what you call yourself does not need to, it does not need to be like what you actually are. In fact, I think when dietitians get super crafty, like with their name of your LLC, and then they operate under that LLC, people don't know who the fuck they are. My father, like, God bless his soul, was like, why would you ever choose the reimbursement dietitian? He's like, that's a terrible name. I was like, that is a fantastic name for SEO for like exactly the types of dietitians I want to hit. Right. So, and then we have the hiring dietitian. I have the PCOS dietitian. I have Amy Plano. So like, think more of function with the name that you name your business, not necessarily of like what you need to carry through. I just remember my dad like taking it to his, he's like, I'm like, dude, it's like so good. My SEO for the reimbursement dietitian is like on fire. Yep. And then in terms of like filing your LLC, it's just going to depend on your state, how expensive it is. Unfortunately, if you're in California, and also to be very mindful, this is kind of where people fuck it up too. And I don't mean to fearmonger, but there are certain states where you can't be an LLC. So like there's certain states where insurance companies don't recognize an LLC. There's certain states where you have to be a PLLC. There's certain states where it's better to be a sole prop. And so nobody like your attorney, your accountant may not tell you those things. Those are little tidbits that you will get, in any type of program, because unfortunately, for good or for bad, most of the dietitians that I've worked with have already made those mistakes. So, don't automatically make the assumption that an LLC is safe to be in your state, right? You want to do a little bit of homework around that because, like I said, historically speaking, LLCs are not always seen as protected entities. I know that sounds fucked up, but my friend that was just down here from New York City, she just left this morning. The state of New York has to be a PLLC. it is a second-degree felony if you operate as an LLC, like something stupid, but not to freak anybody out, but just be mindful of like, be mindful that like when you're setting yourself up legally, you just want to make sure you don't have to go back and do it again. The diet, my friend who's a dietitian, she probably makes, I don't know, $300,000-$400,000 a year. And she has a group practice in New York City. And she had to switch like 8 different insurance companies all over to a new PLLC, and it took like 15 months. So I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but this piece of setting up your business properly, like I wish she was here to tell you, like you want to do it right the first time, because it's nothing but a nightmare to have to reset it up again. I don't currently accept insurance. So what I was trying to ask was if you see a patient in an office, but your business is set up through your home, which address do you use? Sorry if I wasn't clear. So if you're accepting insurance and you want to see a patient in somebody else's office, or say like your friend has office space, that office has to be on file legally with the insurance company. And so any address you are seeing patients out of, so say for example, like I'll just use an example for us. We work with a bunch of PCPs. They love having us in their office. Maybe we go into their office like 1 or 2 times a month. We add those addresses on to the insurance companies, and then we bill under those locations because that's where the encounter occurred, right? So if you know you're going to be somewhere for a length of time, we always want to make sure that we add in those addresses, because technically that's where we're supposed to be. Once operating, how do you control the amount of clients you take on, wait list, turn away? Yeah, so that's kind of one of the things I try to teach you in the scaling portion, but I think it's always going to depend on what your full-time version of that means, right? So for example, I'll just use my practice. Full-time dietitians in my practice do 25 patient-facing hours. So 25 hours of patient care, and then I pay them for another 10 hours. Why that's important in terms of like controlling the amount of clients you take on, right? It's going to be different for everybody, right? And so like in the beginning of my practice, I would see patients like after my full-time job and then on Saturdays and Sundays, right? So before like I think a lot of times in the beginning, you're probably operating like with limited capacity because you maybe have another job. So you kind of have to determine like in those spaces, right? So say you can only see patients like 6 to 9, 2 days a week, and then maybe 9 to 12 on Saturdays, right? That gives you 6 hours of 9. Oh my gosh. 9 hours of patient-facing time. And so that would be 9 hours of billable time. So, I think to answer that question, how do you control the amount? In my practice, we do have waiting lists and things like that. We also have plenty of dietitians to refer other patients to. But I think you want to work in reverse and kind of understand first from an operations standpoint, like how many patients you actually want to see. Rita says, I only have Office Ally for 1 to 2 claims I am in. Oh, how did I think Rita? Different Rita. I'm sorry. Like Chris, Rita, our Rita P is in Massachusetts. I'm so sorry. Office Ally. Yeah. And so just so everybody knows, Office Ally is $45 per month. And that's in addition to, so we use Intake Q. Intake Q, I think per provider is like $30. So it costs us several $100s a month just for the EMR. And then Office Ally is $45. It does not matter if you submit 1 claim or 22 claims. It's through unique NPI. And for the last 3 months by accident, they have used my NPI and we have been charged for 1 claim. So if it makes anybody feel better, we get fucked too on those. So I'm sorry, Rita, that's shitty. May consider Calyx. Yep. Yeah. Calyx is like, I would say, and when we talk about this in both level 1 and level 2, mostly level 1, I think I'm going to help you guys select your EMRs. Calyx is a no-brainer if you want cheap. Calyx, you have an EMR and a clearinghouse for under $67. So if price is like your main concern, I would definitely go with Calyx. ClaimMD will integrate with Practice Better, and then also with Healthy, but both of those are going to be more expensive. So if you guys are like thinking
And we're going to talk about this in level 1, like how do you select an EMR? I walk you guys through all of that. But if you're looking for like very inexpensive, I would go with Calix. Their IT team is great. My team hated it, but for a solo provider, I think it's like great for under $67. It's run by a dietitian, and she's absolutely lovely. I have a sole prop since 2019. Hard to convert to an LLC. Do I need a type 2? I have a business. Yeah. So I would say if I have two main regrets in my private practice. Two things I did wrong that I still regret to this day. The first thing I did wrong was I started my private practice as a sole proprietor with no legal protection. And so two things that happen in that scenario. I was audited by the IRS, which means when you are a sole proprietor, they have a heyday. They can go in both, they go in both your personal and your business because you aren't separated. And then the second piece was when you change to an LLC as you grow in your business, you have to re-credential with all of the insurance companies. And so I had to re-credential with the insurance companies with a team of 10 under a whole new EIN, and it was a nightmare. So that was the biggest first mistake that I made, was not setting my business up properly. I don't think I got paid maybe for 7 months because the transition is really hard. It's not a linear transition where you give them a new tax IN. It's a nightmare. And there's very few things that I regret. I regret that one. And then I also regret not hiring properly in my practice in the beginning, hiring people as independent contractors when legally and structurally that wasn't correct. That created a lot of issues down the road. So those are my two main regrets. So if I can give you any words of advice before you guys do anything in your practice, that's what, like, once again, that's why we're really trying to make this level 1 like a no-brainer. Like, set up your business correctly so you do not need to do anything down the road. If you change your business structure, I want to be crystal clear, you need to re-credential with all of the insurance companies. So like, that's why like we tell dietitians, like, slow down before you speed up. Just to be clear, whatever location you recommend are not insurance fraud, right? Even renting office space is okay. Yeah. As long as it's not, yeah, exactly. Yeah, legally. So just to be very clear, in any type of coaching program, I can't give legal and tax advice. I can just tell you my experience, in terms of like what, but I can't, like, because there's always going to be a gray area. Some dietitians will live in the gray area. I don't live in the gray area anymore. So random question, website builder suggestions. I use Website Design Plus, and then now I have an internal team who does some like the website building. So my social media people also do my website. With that being said, they completely fucked up this landing page for you guys, so I needed to redo it. It took them 6 weeks to do the landing page that I'll send you out to. And by the time I received it, it was pretty fucking terrible. So I redid the whole thing. So even if you have a website builder, just to be very clear, and I love my team, it just wasn't like, I just didn't like it. So remember, when you hire a website builder, you have to give them all the copy and the direction. So once we went back and forth on my team for some of the suggestions, it was just much easier for me to do it myself. So I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer there, but so Website Design Plus, I use Maggie there. And there's also a dietitian, Katie Zielinski, maybe. People seem to love her as well. I have not used her, but I love Artie's doing cool shit. So, but Website Design Plus, I use Maggie. She's the owner there. Yeah, also good question. What if you, I'm surprised nobody's asked this one. This one always gets asked a lot. What if you have all your contracts and then you move to another state? Can you keep them? No, because then you're not operating in that state. So for example, if you say you're in Florida and you can't get into any of the networks because they're in Florida, so you set up shop in another state, which is somewhat illegal. You need a physical location in that state. You need your business set up in that state. And you need to pay taxes in that state. So if you move, generally you'll need to open up shop in the new state and then dissolve the business and those contracts and then reestablish in the new state. Super, super hard if you're like military, and you're constantly moving every 2 years. It's terrible. But legally, that's how you have to do it. Because if you have a practice in another state, you have a physical address in that state. And then based on the fact that you have a physical address, the IRS sees you as doing business in that state, even if you're telehealth only. So like nobody, like that's super important because I see a lot of dietitians doing that and they don't realize that the IRS will start coming and looking for that money that you did not pay in the state that you didn't have a residence in. Yeah, I'm gonna try not Alexia's fraud piece talking about, yeah, so I don't like, so like legally, just to be very clear, you're supposed to be in the office that you have on file. That's just legally how, if you ask an attorney, the attorney will say to you, at least my attorney will say, it's not gray. You are supposed to be in that office location. During COVID, you could not be in that office location. Therefore, it was okay for you to be at home. But if you ask the insurance companies, they will tell you that, you know, legally you're supposed to be in that space. Yeah. Yeah. And Rita, don't worry. I mean, like, don't like, I know I say this very lightly, like shit totally happens. Like, you know what I mean? Like part of my husband says to me all the time, like, why do you get so upset when dietitians like do stuff that? And I said, because like I try so hard to be super vocal about certain things. And one of the things I am really vocal about is the EIN stuff. But I also think like some of my all of my best lessons, Rita, have been like falling in big giant piles of shit. So like it doesn't matter like what stage you are in your business. Like I'm 100% certain I will continue to make a shit ton of mistakes. So like, you know, I like, and I think that's why I think most things in life don't bother me. I've been audited by the IRS twice. I've lost both of my parents who are like my best friends. So it's like insurance companies have nothing on me. Changing my address has nothing. You know what I mean? So I just think like as business owners, like it's, I don't want to say don't worry about it because you're going to want to stick needles in your eyes, but like you can only do the best you can with what you got. People are freaking out about office addresses. You do the best you can with what you have, right? You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm just a firm believer is like you every day you show up, you do your best. And like that's gonna look different. But you know, there's a difference between doing our best and doing stupid shit, right? And a lot of dietitians, like they do a lot of stupid shit. Not you, Rita. I'm not saying because you had no idea when you set yourself up, but like anonymous dietitians asking like unethical questions, like crowdsourcing answers, like that's stupid shit. Like, you know, so okay, friends. Hopefully you guys learned a ton. I'm sure my team will put this up on YouTube at some point. So if you guys want to rewatch it, I will send you guys out that stuff about level 1. Keep your eyes out, like if you're interested, like in the billing. I think we're gonna like really cap the billing one because I really want to make sure you guys get the support you need. The starting your business stuff, I probably can teach you guys in my sleep. So, but thank you for coming to hang. Thank you for all of my technical difficulties. And I'll see you guys soon. Okay. Thank you again.